Wow Cafe, he had discussed his seminal work on the history of the Sikhs with special reference to the Guru Ram Rai Darbar. A brilliant scholar from JNU, he joined the ONGC and chose to retire and write books on the city which was both his Janmabhoomi as well as his Karmabhoomi. Joining us for this session are his closest friends and associates from the valley, his colleague, friend from ONGC and now a corporate trainer and management consultant, Manoj Barthwal, the eminent educationist, ad administrator, Kulbhushan Kain, social anthropologist and scholar activist, Lokesh Ori, senior journalist, Arun Pratap Singh, to remember his life and times and their association with him.
We also have son of Pradeep, Dhruv, who has come all the way from Bombay. So may I invite you, Dhruv, to come over here. And we also have Pradeep's brother and sister-in-law here, and maybe some other friends and relatives sitting here. So welcome, Dhruv, and welcome all the panelists. Well, it's very difficult to be in WOW without Pradeep. He was, I think his book was the first to be read in the WOW Cafe. Let me take you back to 1984 when all of us, all the batchmates, landed in Dehradun in December 1984. And that's when I first met Pradeep in the hostel, in the what we call GT, Graduate Trainees Hostel. We had come from all over the country, and Pradeep was also one of them. A typical Doonite, a very avid cricketer. Along the way, then, from Dehradun, we were sent to MDI Gurgaon for training, so we spent about 2 months in training. And that's when I discovered passion of Pradeep for cricket. He was in Delhi University and JNU, and later on did his PhD also. Along the way, then we got, as typical PSU setup, I got posted to Assam. Pradeep stayed back in Dehradun for some time, and then he went to Chennai. You would often find him discussing idlis and sambar and difficult joints in Chennai. He was very fond of South. And then, our paths crossed off and on. We were posted together in Dehradun. He was in KDMIP when I was in charge of HR setup in Tel Bhavan. Again, then I think he got posted to Jorhat, and then both of us were posted in Mumbai later on. And then finally, we landed in Dehradun. Pradeep retired. We were posted in Delhi also. I was pulled by my batchmate, Mr. D.D. Mishra, who became director HR. So I was pulled from, Mr. Mishra collected all the batchmates, and gave them positions which he thought were important. So I was heading Delhi office, Pradeep was heading corporate sports. And then we spent quite a good time together in Delhi. Pradeep was head of sports. His passion for cricket and other sports also, came handy when Mr. Mishra said that, okay, we are going to launch Everest expedition. And Pradeep obviously was the first choice because he was heading the sports department. I had no clue. Mr. Mishra said that you also be part of this Everest expedition, but I said, I'm from the hills, but I have no idea about mountaineering. But he says, nothing doing, you have to do it. And well, Pradeep, Colonel Chauhan from Indian Mountaineering Foundation, and Mr. D.D. Mishra, we did this Everest expedition, and ONGC is one of the first corporates. ONGC is the first corporate in the world which put 6, ordinary officers on top of Mount Everest. Next year, 10 ONGCians climbed Kanchenjunga, which is a more difficult peak than Mount Everest. And the entire credit goes to Pradeep for handling the expedition. We also tagged along. We did whatever we could. I also learned a couple of things about mountaineering, but he knew everything about mountaineering, about Thamel in Nepal when we went there. so on and so forth. And then finally, Pradeep obviously decided to settle down in Dehradun. His son Pradeep and Dhruv and Arjun and daughter, and most of the family is in Bombay, so he used to shuttle between Dehradun and Mumbai. So that's a brief introduction to all those who do not know Pradeep. But well, it's very difficult for me because we have been friends for the last 37, 38 years to be here without Pradeep. We often went on trips together to Kasauli when Arjun and Dhruv were very small children, and the daughter was also there. We spent a lot of time traveling. We've been to Dudli, so on and so forth. So with that, I think we'll go to Mr. Arun Pratap Singh. Pradeep was a very regular contributor to Garhwal Post. We thought that Mr. Satish Sharma would also be there, but I think he had some other engagement. So Mr. Arun Pratap Singh, who's also with the Garhwal Post, I think we will hand over the mic to you to begin with, and you can take us through some of the things that Pradeep did or how he was associated with Garhwal Post, his passion for Doon and the surrounding valleys, etc. And then we'll take it in a more conversational tone.
Good morning, everyone. Pradeep ji ke baare mein I had heard when I was a student actually, and his father was a leading lawyer of Dehradun, advocate Puran Singh, and his sister Archana also was a famous, she was a famous girl in Dehradun because she used to ride a bike. When few girls used to ride bike in Dehradun, and though Dehradun was a tranquil place, but it always, it always called back people from Dehradun. They somehow never left the charm, never left the belonging to Dehradun, But it is not easy for everyone who goes out for job or for whatever reasons and to come back and then to be able to write something about Dehradun, the passion which he had for Dehradun of the bygone era, which I am also part of. I am also a Dehradun person. So having been brought up, Dehradun now is the capital, but the old charm is not there, That old charm still creates a feeling of nostalgia, which he used to also feel, I think, Pradeep, and he was a regular contributor bygone Dehradun in Garhwal Post. And I used to love those articles of him because they used to remind me of my childhood and of the childhood which we spent in Dehradun. The old Dehradun is so different from the Dehradun of now. There were everywhere you went out from Dehradun, you could see forest and you could see old bungalows, that time without boundaries but green hedges, and that bygone Dehradun comes back, when you read Pradeep Singh. And I used to meet him often at Valley of Words because he was a regular thing here. And his charm used to always be, I always remembered him smiling back to me and say, I read you regularly, you have a good political acumen. He used to appreciate my articles, and I was a fan of him. He may be appreciating my article, but I was a fan of his writing. We can continue.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for your inputs. Well, I distinctly remember, Pradeep and both the families, a couple of other batchmates also who were here. We used to go, Mr. Mani and his son, who's in Germany now. We used to go out sometimes to Sahastradhara, where the children would, frolic in the waters. We went to Kasauli with Pradeep's family, and we spent, Madhu, Pradeep's wife, studied in Lawrence, Senor. So we went to Lawrence, Senor also, and then they showed us around. We went to Dudli, where Pradeep had land holding. Pradeep's ancestors actually came, I think, centuries back to Dehradun, and he was one of the first inhabitants in this area. So he would take us to Dudli, the village. He would take us, you will find often, I'll read some portions from his book, you will find often references of Suswa river. Very often in all, the Salts of the Valley is, strewn with the references to Suswa River, and Sal and the trees and Saigon and whatnot. So he would tell us about that. He would tell us about the cow sheds, and very fond of milk. In fact, when we used to have evenings together, drinks together, he'd say, "ये सब क्या पी रहे हो भाई? दूध पियो." He was very fond of milk and milk products. ये देखो छाछ कितना बढ़िया, देखो क्या. And when he would gulp down a glass of milk, you could see the satisfaction on his face. So and that's how he was. He had a lot of friends in Dehradun, obviously. Lokesh being one of them. Mr. Kain studied with him in his childhood as well, and I think played cricket also together. So let me hand over to Lokesh to tell us something more about his association with Pradeep, and something extra that possibly we do not know.
Thank you, Manojji. Yeah, it's quite unbelievable that last year in the Valley of Words we were sitting together and discussing Rash Bihari Bose, Mr. Kain and me. We were in the same panel and we were talking about this revolutionary. So amongst all the panelists, he was the only one who had this book. So this was this book on Rash Bihari Bose that we were discussing, which was written by Prasoon. And Prasoon was also here, the author, and we were launching the book. So he was the only one amongst the panelists who had the book with flags and notes and marks everywhere. So he had read the book really thoroughly, and he was spot on with his analysis of Rash Bihari Bose's life and and the history of Dehradun. So yeah, I mean, I have very, very fond memories of Pradeep ji. He was a senior from school, and we discussed a lot about the history of Dehradun and his passion for presenting this history was also great. So during the last meetings that we had, he was working with primary sources, with archival material, with whatever he could lay his hands on the history of the Guru Ram Rai Darbar. And some of the stuff that he told me, I don't think even the Guru Ram Rai Darbar is aware of some of those facets of history, of their own history. And so this was, I mean, the arrival of the Guru was a very fascinating period for Dehradun's history. And his insight into, so because his dad had been a lawyer, because he had also, had some insights about how to get the archives and the records from Saharanpur and other places. He was sourcing all that material and we were discussing it in great detail. So I was really amazed at how much he had managed to dig into Guru Ram Rai's past, and even in the later days, I mean, when he was detected with this awful disease, he mentioned to me that I worked so hard on this history, and my regret is that maybe God will not give me time to write it down. But I'm sure Madhuji, who's also a person of letters, and I think she's working on this compilation, and we will very soon have a published account of the history. But there was a lot that we could have gained from him. There was a lot of writing that was still left in him, and the Valley will definitely miss that talent. So he was a great gift to Dehradun, and there are very few scholars like that who are working with that kind of rigor on the history of Dehradun. And I feel it's a great personal loss, but it's also a great loss for the Valley.
Thank you, Lokesh. Yeah, he was a very consummate writer. I mean, you could find all the research that has gone into his writings, the attention to detail. When he describes I'll read some portions from his book. When he describes the forest, when he describes, the paddy fields, the harvesting, and so on and so forth, he would not touch the pen until he had done his research, and then words just flowed out of the pen. Well, Mr. Kain has been associated with Pradeep for a long time. I think you were in St. George's also together, or you played cricket together, and both have passion for history as well. So let me now hand over the mic to Mr. Kain to tell us something about your cricketing stint together, and as also the historical perspective that Pradeep brought to the fore.
Pradeep was 1 year junior to me in school, and even though he was junior to me, but he was a very distinguished Josephite. We were in St. Joseph's. For some time he went to St. George's, because we both played cricket for the school team. And he was a very underrated aspect of Pradeep, and I think so he was slightly lazy about following it up, was his very fine cricketing ability. Now, being a cricketer and a small-time cricket historian, I write a lot on cricket. I thought he was one of the finest cricketers I saw at school level, at least at Dehradun school level, because he's a wonderful batsman, and with a devil-care attitude to a ball. I mean, he would just hit the ball as if it didn't matter whether he got out or not. So at a very early age, I thought he would be a risk-taker because of the way he played his cricket. Then we both went to the Delhi University, and we found ourselves again in adjoining colleges, and we used to play cricket together against each other. And I remember the first match I played against him. I was in Hansraj, he was Ramjas. So I told him, I said, he was junior to me, and I knew his cricket captain very well. So I told him, I said, yeah, I hope you don't hit a ball to me so that I have to catch you out, because I just can't think of catching out a dear cricketer friend of mine. He said, don't worry, I won't hit the ball in the air. So I said, I hope I don't get you run out. He said, no, I won't get run out either. Now, that's my first memory of Pradeep playing cricket with me in Delhi. After that, I think so he went into academic pursuits. He pursued history with great passion and great zest. And then I lost touch with him. And I did not know that he had gone into ONGC. Now, to switch from a very bright and a very inquiring mind into history to go into ONGC, which is completely, totally different, I feel. I don't know much about it. But I thought it was something that he must have adapted very quickly to. But when I came back to Dehradun, and when I wrote the first article for Garhwal Post, but 4 years back, I got a call from him. He got my number from Satish, and he says, I'm Pradeep Singh. Do you recollect who I am? I said, no, many Pradeep Singhs I've met in my life. Are you Pradeep Singh from St. Joseph's? And did you play cricket? And did you study history? He says, yeah. He says, let's meet. So I had read articles written by him. So I had read articles written by him, and I was very fascinated by an ex-ONGC gentleman having such a deep insight into history. I have taught history all my life. I read history even till today. If I have to look for entertainment, I won't pick up Sidney Sheldon, but I'll read history. That's the way I am. So when I read his articles on history and his in-depth knowledge on history, I wondered, where did he get it from? And how did he get the time to do it? And last year, very strangely, we were sharing the same stage, and today Pradeep is not here. Lokesh was there. And we were talking about Ras Bihari Bose and M.N. Roy. And before that, we had a discussion at home. He had come over home. Lokesh had also come over home. The only time 3 of them came to my home. Of course, Pradeep came afterwards, before, and after that. So he had a very broad sweep of history. So I used to tell him, I said, people like M.N. Roy, people like Ras Bihari Bose, people like Lala Hardyal Ram, people like Bhagat Singh, I said, they have contributed a lot. In India would not have got freedom in case it was not for them. Hey, no. He says, kya baat kar rahe ho yaar, Kain, Mr. Kain? What are you talking? He says it required a Gandhi. These people had no mass appeal. So the discussions would go on. And we would argue like good history students. We would argue. But beyond that, he also was a great man for wanting to study history at micro levels. So I think so his great contribution to history is that he was able to delink the macro level picture of all India encompassing to the micro level picture as to what happens at micro level. I would just like to read out a small passage from what he wrote, just a very small one, just to give you a view, because I can't explain it better than what he does. He said the obsession with the mega picture in history has underplayed or even ignored the criticality of local events of historical importance, even when the latter were intensely participated in by citizens under the able local leaders with a vision. So here he's talking of localities. He's not talking of nature. He's talking of the importance of localities. He says it is the putting together of these local episodes in a larger patchwork of explanation that gives life and blood to an historical narrative. So here was a man who was very concerned that Gandhi was being hijacked in a way by saying by somebody like me who said, Bhagat Singh ka bhi role hai. Here's a man who's obsessed with Gandhi's appeal as a mass leader, at the same time emphasizing that the role of the localities and the role of the local readers is the most important link, and which Gandhi exploited for Champaran, Kheda, and in South Africa. So here was a very fine historical mind. And I loved talking to him, and we used to have lovely discussions. He wrote a book, he wrote an article on A.R. Gill, who wrote about cemeteries in Dehradun and Vikas Nagar. And he says, वो पूरी cemeteries में वो Anglo-Indians और उनकी history दबी हुई है. And he wrote about a hotel, Caledonia Hotel on Rajpur Road, in which people used to come because it had its own graveyard. So people would come and maybe die there because they could be buried there. He had such deep knowledge on the local history. So he was a very dear friend, and what linked me even further beyond cricket was his intense knowledge of history. And of course, his son is sitting here. I knew his dad when he was younger than him, certainly. And I knew my father and Pradeep's father knew each other because Chaudhry Puran Singh fought a criminal case for my father when some people beat up my caretaker in a land in Clementown. So my father reached out to Chaudhry Puran Singh. And Archana was my sister's classmate. So my families are connected to him in a very long way. So it was extremely sad and extremely, I just don't know how to put it away. Sometimes words just don't do justice to what one is trying to say. But he was a very fine man and a very fine gentleman. He looked like a scholar. And we were talking of Arun and saying, bygone Dehradun. I used to also say, Pradeep, kya ho gaya Dehradun mein, kaise kya ho gaya? Then one day he told me, he said, kid, aap nahi badal gaye hain. कहता आप नहीं पुराने हो गए हो आप कहते हो पेड़ चले गए हैं कहता मेरे बाल कहाँ चले गए आपके बाल सफेद क्यों हो गए ये a sense of humor. It's very fine correct loss, just not academically but as a human being. I think so. It's someone very close to me, and you won't be able to understand my relationship with him because you'll have to be 60 years younger. Anyway, I have lots of tales, but I think so we're running out of time.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Kain. देहरादून की जब भी बात होती है, आज जब पर्यावरण की बात हो रही है, पेड़ कट रहे हैं और हम लोग बहुत से लोग जो चिंतित हैं देहरादून में रहने वाले पुराने की यहाँ की कुछ फ़िज़ा ही बदल गई है. ये वो देहरादून नहीं रह गया जो पहले रहा करता था. लेकिन मैं जब पहली बार यहाँ आया था 1985 में प्रदीप के साथ, तो उस समय उतना जानकारी नहीं थी. दोबारा मेरी पोस्टिंग हुई 97 में और 97 से लेके और 2010 तक फिर मैं देहरादून में रहा, जब ये बच्चे सेंट जोसेफ में पढ़ते थे. मेरे बेटे भी दोनों सेंट जोसेफ में पढ़ते थे. ये सब अच्छे दोस्त भी हैं आपस में, और गेम वेम भी, तुम भी गेम बना रहे हो, वो भी गेम बना, तो ये सब करते रहते. इन लोगों के साथ हम दूधली जाते थे. एंड देन we would go to where Pradeep has a school in Doodli, which is jointly run by both the brothers, and उनकी wives भी, तो हम वहाँ भी जाते थे. In fact, I was in one of the annual functions I was invited. तो वहाँ बोलना वालना भी पड़ा. तो जब भी हम लोग वहाँ जाते थे तो प्रदीप हमको खेतों की तरफ ले चलते थे, नदी के किनारे ले जाते थे, सुसवा. So this book, Salts of the Valley, which I have picked up today for today's session, is all about Suswa River and Nag Siddh and Lakshman Siddh. इतनी शिद्दत से वो लिखते थे. He had a grip over the environment. He knew the nature. He knew each tree. Once we were in Kasauli, he said, Manoj, if you just embrace a tree, the tree is going to communicate to you. You are at peace when you are in nature. So such was his love for the nature, you know. And I think with your permission, I'll read I'll take you through some of the things that he has written in Salts of the Valley to give some ladies and gentlemen who have not read his work as to what kind of consummate writer he was. So this Salts of the Valley has 7 stories, starting with Phantom Yarns, which is a story of in which he talks about Suswa River, Doon Valley, its surroundings. And you know, when you read this particular story, you are reminded of Jim Corbett, as if you are walking through Pradeep into the forest. You are walking through him in the valleys. He says there are boulders. फिर वो cart लेके जाते हैं, वो बैलगाड़ी लेके जाते थे, वगैरह वगैरह. ये कहानी ऐसी है, 3 दोस्तों की है जो who were very fond of living in that area, and one of them was very fond of शिकार. उस ज़माने में 100-150 साल पर शिकार, like my nana used to go for शिकार. He would say, उसको कहते शिकार खाना है, मीट नहीं खाते थे, शिकार खाते थे. You would kill an animal and then it'll be a well-earned meal. So he talks about that, and he takes you into small details. When these 3 gentlemen are crossing the river and it's raining, they go to the forest guest house. But they are not allowed inside the forest guest house because you have to book the forest guest house. So they spend the evening in the courtyard or in the veranda. फिर वो उनका वहाँ का जो गौरी शंकर उनका चौकीदार था, वो खाना बना के लाता था, उन लोगों को चाय वाय पिलाई. इनफैक्ट प्रदीप और हम थानो फॉरेस्ट जाते थे कई बार और वहाँ रहते थे, और we would light a fire, and kids would play cricket, football. Now Fando, everything is commercialized now. So that's the story about 3 gentlemen going for shikar into that Dudli, Badripur area. You could smell basmati rice when Pradeep used to talk about that. You could smell the earth when he talks about nature. Look at this small piece that he wrote. The raindrops drumming on the tin roof of the rest house was a novelty to them, as their own houses in the village were roofed with thatch. उस समय टिन के forest guest house में टिन के छत पर पड़े रहे होंगे. Where the heaviest rains were muffled. Not seeing the rain from their places on the veranda, they experienced its intensity with the increased sound of raindrops on the roof while they peered into the heavy black night. I mean, you can hear the raindrops falling on the tin roof. जो thatched roof जो इन लोगों के घर में थे, उसमें वो आवाज नहीं सुनाई देती थी. And the same thing you would experience in Assam as well. So there are 7 stories. In most of the stories, he talks about the landlords, the way they acquired land, the way crops were harvested, and so on and so forth. But that is not all. There is a story about a gentleman, Gurudeen, who was a mango gatherer. And I didn't know that one could make one's living by gathering wild mangoes from the forest. Otherwise, mangoes are grown in a more commercial way. But here is a story about Gurudeen who falls down from a mango tree and injures himself, and the baton passes on to his son, Mehardeen, who has to collect and survive. So the details with which Pradeep explains that you go inside the deep sal forest and you will find a very old mango tree from which this boy would pick mangoes and supply, and he would sell it to the nearby villages with a bamboo. He would carry 2 canisters possibly, or 2 buckets along a bamboo stick resting on his shoulders. So he would go into each detail. He would tell you how mangoes were picked with small branches so that they don't ripe, they don't rot, how they have to be stored, what is the gestation period, and so on and so forth. So he takes you through the forest as if you are walking with Pradeep inside the forest. There is a story about a bullock rescuing Dhola, his love for animals, and he says that Dhola was like a child, like a family member. And you know, in the mornings, these servants used to take the bullocks to the jungle for grazing, and they lose Dhola, and they come back, and the landlord gets very annoyed that how could you lose this bullock who's like my child? And he sends them back again, and he says that whoever brings him back will be given a reward. So, you know, the love for nature. So, whereas he talks about the landlords and how they harvested the fields, what kind of life they lived, he also talks about the ordinary people, like a mango gatherer. He talks about Gujars. So when in one of the stories, you know, the protagonist goes inside the village, inside the jungle, there is a Gujar lady who brings some ghee, and he buys that ghee. And his wife had kept some rotis with him. तो वो वहीं पर आग जलाता है जंगल में थोड़े से, उसमें रोटी गरम करता है, उस रोटी में घी को डालता है और उसमें शक्कर भी था, शक्कर के साथ you know, he explains the sense of satisfaction that this man had after he had this humble meal of ghee and roti and jaggery. So he was a man who could describe Doon Valley to you, और शायद आने वाले समय में जब जंगल इतनी बुरी तरह से कट रहे हैं और सब कुछ बदलता चला जा रहा है, शायद इसी तरह की कहानियां हमें याद दिलाएंगे कि देहरादून कभी इस तरह का भी हुआ करता था. शायद हमको कई किलोमीटर जाना पड़ेगा वो साल के पेड़ देखने के लिए, साल के जंगल देखने के लिए जो यहाँ हुआ करते थे. लेकिन प्रदीप की किताब आप कभी भी उठा के देखेंगे तो हम लोग जो उसके समय के हैं हमें याद आ जाएगा कि देहरादून की एक खूबसूरती हुआ करती थी. I think we have a little bit of time, so we welcome Dhruv, his son, once again. And I think as a son, we would like him to speak about Pradeep, the way he groomed them, the way he mentored them and took them along, maybe played cricket with them and so on and so forth. So tell us something about him, Dhruv, from your perspective. Yeah.
Hello. Hi. Hi everyone. Thank you for being here. It's an honor for me to sit here with everyone, his colleagues and friends. Sorry. So, like, I don't know what else I can add. I mean, they pretty much described him pretty well. And a lot of things I've also learned from Mr. Kain and Mr. Singh and everyone out here. A few other things that I probably didn't know about my dad. The thing I can tell you is Dad was the kind of person who used to love he used to love like when somebody was pursuing their passion, their interests, whether it was sports or arts or writing. Writing is something that he loved. He was also an avid reader, and he tried to inculcate that habit to his kids, but with varying degrees of success. But he loved the city. He loved the connection to the city and the land. And I think he romanticized the stories, and he tried to get us to fall in love with the city. And some of you may not know that prior to this book, he also had another book called Suswa Saga. That was his attempt at explaining his kids, us and our grandkids, about our forefathers, how they came and settled down in Dehradun and the attachment to the land. And I'm happy I read it, and I was able to discuss some of the points in there, some of the things, some of the questions that I had while he was still lucid. And it's something that I'm going to cherish, and I'm going to ensure that my kids and my grandkids are also going to have some sort of connection and keep that kind of connection to the city. And he was also a person who just knew a lot about everything. So you can talk to him about everything, and he'll give you some sort of interesting information about the thing, be it a place or anything. You'd point at anything. He was the kind of person, in fact, you'd point at a river. Anywhere in India we used to go, we used to travel a lot. You point at a river, and he'll give you some sort of like interesting tidbit about the river, how it came to be, some history about the river. He used to love that. And I feel now that there were so many things, we used to just use him as a reference for almost everything that we had, almost every question that we had, and that is something that we dearly miss. And it's a void that I don't know can ever be filled. But I'm happy, and I'm sure he would have loved being here on the stage. This was one of his favorite things to do, and he used to send us so many pictures and videos, and so I know he's going to miss this, and but I'm honored to be here, and thank you so much for doing this. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Dhruv.
I would like to add one.
Yeah, of course.
Pradeep Singh was one whom I read and then felt that actually he changed my perspective about history, that local history is as important as national or global or European history or Mughal history or movement for independence. He brought that, imbibed that feeling in me that local history is as important as anything else, as national history or global history. So I am very grateful to him for that. I can now look back and I also think of writing something about bygone Dehradun, because I am influenced by him. He's gone too soon, we'll miss him.
Lokesh or Kansab, would you like to add something before I take some quick questions?
Yeah, I would just like to say that if there are any budding authors sitting over here, please don't wait for very long, and write whatever you want to write, because this is the message that I got from Pradeep ji in our last meeting. And I think the way he connected geography and history was also very remarkable, and there's a lot that we need to learn from his connect with the earth and with the forest.
Kansab, some quick.
One thing which Pradeep used to discuss with me, and he wrote about it also, was how passionate he was about the truth. And he used to fear that Gandhiji's role, he was very fond of Gandhiji. He was very fearful that Gandhi would be remembered as the man who brought freedom to India, which he thought was correct. That Gandhi was largely responsible for building up the national movement. But what he feared was that people might forget Gandhi's quest for the truth. And he told me that Gandhi was by mistake taken to a brothel in England, and then he started feeling very ashamed. And he said, but why should I hide it? That is the truth. So that was the genesis of the book, My Experiments with Truth. So he says we must pursue the truth, and please have this angle to Gandhi, which is as important, which I think is very, very important in today's world. We sometimes forget the truth for convenient political gains. So that was what Pradeep's insight and linking Gandhi and truth was. A very remarkable man, Pradeep.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if anyone has any observations or would like to say something, you're welcome, because we have another 2-3 minutes to go. All right. I was in constant touch with Pradeep when he was not well and he was in Bombay. Sure. I missed it. Ji, Sanjay ji. मैं आपको बता सकता हूँ प्रदीप की जितनी भी किताबें हैं उसमें स्पेशली ये सूसवा सागा और साल्स ऑफ द वैली शायद यहाँ अवेलेबल है, आप पढ़ सकते हैं. उनके दो बहुत ही डिस्टिंक्ट एज एन ऑथर बहुत ही दो डिस्टिंक्ट पहलू थे. एक तो हिस्टोरियन जो बहुत ही कॉन्ज्यूमेट था, और दूसरा नेचर के बारे में. उनकी जो दोनों किताबें हैं वो पर्यावरण के बारे में हैं, उनके प्रकृति प्रेम के बारे में हैं. एक ढाक के पत्ते से कैसे होली में रंग बनाया जा सकता है उसके बारे में एक कहानी इस बारे में है कि कैसे गांव के लोग ढाक के पत्ते लेने जाते हैं और वहाँ फिर वो अपना रात 2 दिन रुकते हैं और 2 बैलगाड़ियाँ लेके जाते हैं जिसमें ढाक के पत्ते आएंगे, उसको भिगाया जाएगा और उससे फिर होली खेली जाएगी. तो उनकी सारी कहानियों में 2 उनकी पुस्तकें आप ज़रूर पढ़ें, सुसवा सागा और साल्स ऑफ द वैली. आपको एक उनके बारे में थोड़ा बहुत जानकारी उससे हो जाएगी. तो विद दिस मैं दो शब्द मुझे याद आ रहे थे कि प्रदीप की जब तबीयत ठीक नहीं थी तो तब भी हम लगातार संपर्क में थे और मधु से मेरी बात अमूमन हुआ करती थी. प्रदीप was very concerned about probably he knew that something is happening to him and then his family has to be looked after. So he would constantly tell me, send documents and things like that, which I used to submit to ONGC for nomination, etc. So he was always concerned. Unfortunately, I couldn't see him when he was in the hospital bed. We were traveling to France, and when he passed away, we were still not in India. So that void will still remain. तो मुझे कुछ दो पंक्तियाँ याद आ रही हैं जो मैं अपने दोस्त के लिए कहना चाहूँगा. तेरे आने की आस है दोस्त, सुबह ये फिर क्यों उदास है दोस्त, महकी महकी फिजा ये कहती है, तू कहीं मेरे आस पास है दोस्त, तू कहीं मेरे आस पास है दोस्त. मुझे लगता है कि प्रदीप यहीं कहीं हमारे बीच में, वैली ऑफ वर्ड में हमारे बीच में. This valley of words cannot be complete without Pradeep. So I think with this we come to the end of the session. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here, for paying tributes to our dear friend. Have a great day ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all, Mr. Barthwal, Mr. Kain, Mr. Ori, Mr. Singh, and Dhruvji. Friends, all the books of Pradeep Singh are on sale and display in the bookstore. Please pick up a copy and keep it as a precious treasure. This would be your best tribute to him. Thank you for joining this session. Please do register yourself at the reception desk to keep connected with this festival of arts and letters. And at last but not the least, somebody's keys are here, yeah, if you can collect them. And at last, if not the least, if you would like to contribute to this festival, please scan the support wow code at any one of the locations. All donations are acknowledged and eligible for benefits under 12A and 80G of the Income Tax Act. The next session will start in 10 minutes. Thank you.